So just to remind us of the context, so this year the theme of the year is Be the Revolution. And this quality of being is very much what this is the kind of kicking off point for all that we're doing this year. How can we really lean into this act of coming into awareness, coming into our bodies, recognizing what's actually happening in our experience? Because that simply coming into ourselves is the foundation of any change, any potential. Without being aware where we're starting, well, we're just going to be running blindly on habits, on just kind of blind responses to our life. So we need to be in our own experience, directly aware of our own experience as a sort of ground, the base for the revolution of really waking up fully into our life and creating these opportunities to move towards liberation. And this image is said to be like a mirror. It's something we can hold up and reflect on our own experience, but use it as a way to really begin to clarify where we find ourselves. And in the first week, I suggested that this image really could be, or inviting you to try to envisage it more as rather than a sort of a flat shape. It's actually a three-dimensional sphere. And I gave you this analogy of it being like an orange. So you cut through the orange, and this is what you're looking into, this sort of flat surface. But actually, it's a three-dimensional image that you're looking at. And then last week, in the first week, I looked at these three: the cockerel, the pig, and the snake, and I was suggesting that they are, in some ways, a circle that is protecting something. What is it protecting? I was suggesting that it's protecting love. That actually, all that we do is our attempts to find a means to express, to manifest, to embody love, and that we create these different dynamics in us because that longing, that desire to love and be loved gets distorted, gets suppressed, gets confused through our life experience. So that's the kind of heart of it. And then moving out, started to look at what we describe as term karma, and this was last week. So we were looking at how our willed actions start to create seeds which drop into our life that accumulate certain habits of being, habits of response. And recognizing and seeing that, how we can actually use that to power our life in a very creative way, rather than just becoming or being victims to our life. We actually take much fuller responsibility of the conditions that we're creating around us to begin to open, to reopen this inherent state of love which we all carry deep within us. And I describe this kind of second ring as it's like a ball of string, where we get so tangled up in our attempts to love and be loved that we create this kind of whole complex around and within our being, which filters our capacity to express ourselves fully, to flow freely into love. And so I'm going to take it into the next phase of this image now, where we're looking at what's called the 6 realms, which is this next sphere. And the six realms, what they're really pointing to is the different ways that these kind of these conditions can create for us the particular way that we see, that we perceive our experience. So we have six realms here, but just to point out that actually each one of us is living in our own completely unique realm. Every single one of us is living in a personal universe of our own making. We're perceiving this, what we kind of experience as being out there. Each one of us is knowing this experience completely individually and uniquely. There is nothing here that we can point to and also say this is our kind of shared experience. There might be kind of areas which are familiar or we can kind of point to, but when we really start to go into it, for instance, how you perceive this image, perceive the Buddha image, perceive the shrine itself, will be completely unique to you. Your kind of points of reference, your responses to the colours, your responses to the forms that are here will be, you'll be calling on your aesthetics, your own kind of understanding, your own history of being in relation to these forms, to nature. All of those things are completely personal and individual. And that way of looking at that is, well, the image that I'm suggesting is that each one of us is looking through a set of net curtains. So, does that do it for you, Kripapi?
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is that it's impossible, or it's very difficult to get a very clear perception of what is really here, because we have these what are described as veils. I'm describing them as net curtains. Does it for me? Which we kind of we're sort of draping across our vision, our perception. And those curtains, you know, we do see through it, but we only see what we can kind of glimpse through this experience that we've created for ourselves. Because we're making shorthand interpretations, evaluations, judgments on this experience all the time. We're making shorthand of this incredibly complex situation that we find ourselves in and reducing it down to some sort of a manageable way of perceiving this experience. So this is the curtains, the net curtains, which we're peering through.
That's very Alan Bennett.
What is this going on out
What are you
here?
doing over there?
Yeah. But also, you know, it has to be said that these curtains are also affecting our perceptions of coming towards us. How we're perceived is partly by the net curtains that we're kind of draping around ourselves. These windows that we obscure really into our sort of the depths of our being, and particularly the windows that open up towards the depths to which we really love. We have these hearts that are just dying to be known, wanting to be known, wanting to be expressed. But my sense is that that's very difficult to do, to really open out our hearts, to really fully connect with each other is a hugely vulnerable making experience. We really have to risk everything to open our heart and allow love towards us, to know that love is in the world, and to know that we are capable of receiving it and giving it. So to protect us from that rawness, that vulnerability, we create, we wrap ourselves in these sort of limitations to be able to cope with this experience. So the problem is that because we each have this kind of these veils around us, overlaying our experience, we forget that how personal an experience it is. So we start to interact with the world as if everybody is living out of the same place that we're living out of. That they understand, they kind of know the references that we're making, that they perceive the world in exactly the same way as we do. If we use a word, of course, I know what it means, so why wouldn't you know what that means? And it's this imagining that we're living in a common shared experience and that we're all perceiving this in the same way. This is one of the main sources of suffering, because we start to relate to each other and inevitably there's a sort of mismatch. We start to rub up against each other because we think we're kind of speaking about the same thing, speaking about a shared experience, when actually that mismatch is creates these kind of a disjoint. It creates the rub of being misinterpreted, being misread, being unseen. So this is what we're kind of working with, trying to take ownership of our particular experience and trying to live clearly out of that so that we understand fully where we're coming from and allowing others to recognize that each one of us has a very particular and unique experience that they're trying to work with to free love into being. So these realms are all kind of ways that that love gets distorted, gets diminished in some ways. So I really want you to see that this whole realm, all this that we are in, is our attempts to love, to find love, to express love, and how that's getting distorted, getting bound and locked into particular ways of being. So I'm just going to take you through these realms one at a time, very briefly. So you'll see on the sheet, you've got, maybe just look at the white one to begin with, because that's probably easier to kind of read. I'll come on to the more dense image afterwards. So in this, what I'm going to do is show us through the, sorry, Taranita, if you're on the first image online, for those who are online. So each one of these realms, I'm suggesting that they draw out a particular way of how love gets distorted. So I'm going to begin in the hell realm. Surprisingly enough.
Your favourite.
My favourite realm, of course. So, why did I say that? I won't tell you. Why that might be. Anyway, so let's start. So the hell realm is down in this bottom section. So just to describe it very briefly, in this hell realm, there are what are called the icy hells and the fiery hells. And you can kind of, this is a response to the hurt, this kind of when we can't find a connection, we can't express love, what happens is that there can be a kind of a lashing out, there can be a real pushing away of life, pushing away of the depths of our own heart, denying our own kind of sensitivity and vulnerability. And we find ourselves descending deeply into being frozen in a particular way of being, a defended way of being. We get encased in this cold, icy hatred that is incredibly kind of closed and tight. And the deeper we allow that experience to kind of deepen into the sort of cyclic ruts of our being, we just got locked more and more fully into this icy state. So you can imagine, well, when I was thinking about this, the Damien Hirst, the kind of the shark in formaldehyde, it's something, it's just stuck in time. So it's something like that, that we kind of get so locked in hate, in this sort of state of hatred, that it's very hard to kind of find a way to release and soften back towards love. So that's getting locked in, and we get frozen, our life gets frozen into a particular shape. But then there's also the hatred that burns and destroys, that tries to turn to ash the sources of hurt. These, the hatred that burns into our body and scours our precious life. And I think one of the images that I always connect with the hell realm is a particular Buddha figure, Bodhisattva figure, sorry, called Shittigava. This figure appears as a monk, and he has a stand with a lamp that he holds on a staff, sorry, with a lamp on it. And he's pictured with carrying small children. And he said that he descends into the hells to bring back into life the beings that get lost in the hell realms. And my sense of this particular figure is that those young parts of ourselves, those young beings that pick up particular ways of being, particular habits of being, that as we grow and mature, get tighter and tighter. It's those parts of ourselves that we need to have rescued, that we need to be gathered up, to be held, to be nourished. But I'll come back to say more about each of these, that which moves us out of the hell realms as we go around. I'm going to do a second cycle. So this is just an explanation of the realms, and then I'm going to look at the second cycle of responses of the enlightened mind, the Bodhisattva, how they respond to these different realms. So the second one, I'm going to come around this way. Oh, it's actually the wrong way on this. I'll take it this way. So it's these are can be swapped around, but I'm going to talk about the animal realm next. So the animal realm, the kind of key emotion for that is greed. So we have in the animal realm basically this sense of, well, we're just reaching out to try to get our immediate needs for security, for sex, for food, kind of taken care of very immediately. And once those needs have been met, then there's a kind of relaxing and a we can drop down into an unawareness and forget that actually all those things are connected or can be connected to the expression of love, this deeper expression of our longing for deep, intimate connection, our longing to be nourished, nurtured, encouraged, supported, etc. So this is the animal realm. I'll come back to the figures in this realm shortly. And so I'm going to come around this way, so just assume that was the animal realm. So you can see one of the things about the animal realm is that the animals don't recognize the precarious nature of their situation. They're blindly living their life without recognizing, certainly in the image, you usually have the image of the hunter and also being eaten by other animals. So there's the precarious nature of the animal realm becomes invisible because we become so identified with those greed and need to find those immediate satiating experiences. I'm just wondering if I think I'm going to revise how I'm going with this because otherwise it can take too long. So I'm going to have to include each, so for each realm, there is a response that is trying to draw us back into towards love, the expression of love. So this is this glossier image. So that image refers to the archetype of Avalokiteshvara. This is this 1,000-armed being. And in each of the 1,000 arms, at the end of each of the arms, there is a hand. And at the end of the hand, or within the palm of the hand, there is an eye. And it's said that for every situation, every suffering being, there is an appropriate response from the compassionate mind, the compassionate being that is embodying, responding out of love for all life. So I said a bit about the response of in the hell realm. What's needed there is really this need for the ambrosia of love. So when we're in hell, we just need to be held. We need to be picked up. We need to be transported out, just lifted out of that situation. So this is the hell realm. But when we move to the animal realm, there's something different there. The bodhisattva, the qualities, the love has to find a different way to meet the animal realm. So in the animal realm, the traditional gift of the bodhisattva in that realm is the book. That's the image on the wheel of life. But what is the book? Really, the book is referring to imagination. It's referring to, as tradition says, to culture, but it's really the capacity to imagine, to dream. Because what the imagination, what the dream world invites us into is that it carries us beyond the literal level of our experience. So everything that is, if we can connect to the imagination, then everything has multiple layers of meaning. Each of our meetings, each of the things that we see around us have this symbolic level to them. has a significance that just opens and opens the more that we really give ourselves to life. So we need the book of the imagination. We need the book of poetry, the book of dreams, to be able to open out beyond the world, the animal realm that some of us can find ourselves in. So this is the next realm. So coming round, the next world we come to is described as the human realm. So it might be strange to imagine that, well, aren't we all in the human realm? But according to this image, it's just one of many realms that we might describe ourselves through. I've heard it said that the human state is something to be aspired to rather than kind of accepted that we are already here in the human state. So these different realms, the human state is just one of many that we touch in and out of as we move through our life. So the human realm is, well, it's really describing the world that we might be familiar with, of various occupations, various living situations, cultural situations that we find ourselves in. And within the human realm, what the difficulty of this particular realm is that we can become very attached to a particular way of being. We can become very attached to people being a particular way, of ourselves being a particular way, of seeing that one particular way of expressing love is the only way. So we can get very caught up and over-identified with a very particular way of being and expressing ourselves. We can get lost in careers that really aren't really deeply meeting our heart, meeting that real longing to express ourselves fully. So the human realm suffers from, described as the affliction of attachment. So we become attached to particular ways of being. And the Bodhisattva offers us what's called the begging bowl. So it's just this bowl, and traditionally it was associated with the wanderer's life in ancient India. Many people, after they'd fulfilled their family duties, would head off into the world to seek spiritual guidance, spiritual teachers, wandering and just begging from place to place wherever they went. But as you know, Triratna, we're not a monastic tradition. What we emphasize is called going for refuge. So the begging bowl for us is that capacity to really go for refuge, to renounce becoming attached to these kind of particular forms, and go for refuge in that sense of really opening to Sangha, opening to our relational life, opening to the teachings, opening to the exemplification of the Buddha, and trying to allow those forces to influence our life. So we move towards those forces, trying to free ourselves from the attachment to particular forms. So the bowl is a very interesting symbol. And one of the things about it is I think it exemplifies this, the need to embody awareness, to actually feel it as a full embodied experience. So this Be the Revolution is very much about really trying to fill out all the different levels of our being, our physical, emotional, feeling, mental levels of our experience. And the container of the bowl allows all of those things to be present. But also, the bowl creates what is sometimes described as the womb of potential. So that open space that we create by really fully being with our experience opens this possibility of this womb giving birth to new forms, new life, primarily giving birth to expression, our unique expression of love. So this is the human realm. Moving on, we come to the Deva realm, the God's realm, as it's sometimes called. And the Deva realm, their primary kind of affliction in this realm is actually they are deluded. So in this realm, the Devas are really, whatever they wish just seems to appear for them without any difficulty. They want new cars, new homes, fantastic holidays. These things just kind of arise for them. But there's also that sense of they can get into, the gods, the Devas can get into really exalted states, which they believe are permanent and eternal. So it's said the gods live for long periods of time in these very beautiful states of being. But they don't realize that they've only arrived there through this kind of inner hub of conditions, creating conditions, which when those conditions come to an end, then they will fall out of that particular realm. So what the Bodhisattva offers in this realm is the musical instruments called the lyre, which is really a stringed instrument that just sings, tells a song. And what that's really doing is that music, it's said to be the music of impermanence, but I think it's the music of empathy. When we hear music, it activates our emotional centers, it activates our heart. And we start to recognize that we're not an enclosed system, that we are actually greater than this illusion of separateness. So the Deva is given empathic connection. And it gives us this capacity to not, to sort of release ourselves being lost in our own sphere of pleasures, our gratifications, our concerns, and really seeing that we have this potential to see beyond ourselves, to open out into a much fuller, richer experience of being human, or being alive, sorry. So that's the Devas. No idea how to do the time. Half an hour, I think.
It's come quarter past.
Okay. So let's just keep going. We'll get there. So I'm going to go to the next realm now. So the next realm is called the Ashuras, or the Titans. The Ashuras they're quite interesting. They're quite interesting. So the image for the Ashuras is that it's a realm of warring, where they're fighting with each other. There's a lot of polarization. There's very strong identity with the masculine and the feminine, and it's sort of embodied in very particular ways. So there's a splitting of experience. There's a kind of breaking of a sense of wholeness. And the Ashuras, the way they try to counter that is to attack that which they think will bring them these sort of fruits of the satisfaction, the ease, which they can see being played out in the God realm. So in the Ashura realm, there's always this tree drawn in, and the tree is rooted in the Ashura realm, and it's branches extend up into the God realm, where there's usually these beautiful fruits that the gods can just pluck. But the devas themselves can't actually reach those fruits. So their solution is to just a cut at the tree, to try to chop the tree down, to grab hold of those fruits by force, by power.
The ashras can't, you said the devas, but it's the ashras can't reach the fruit.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, the ashras can't. Thank you.
Just in case
It was
Chris
actually
had
just to see when anybody was listening. So, there's one, yes, thanks. Right.
Carry on.
Yeah, I'll just leave that one in, you know. So in terms of the ashras, so I say they're trying to cut through. So what they're doing is they don't realize there's a very strong connection between the roots and the branches or the fruit of this particular tree. So rather than kind of trying to work at nourishing, nurturing the roots, they're just really trying to kind of violently attack the tree to grasp these apparent fruits. So there's a real sense of trying to use force, power to get one's needs met. But it's also in this realm, the realm is said to be very associated with pride. So we see ourselves as either being in kind of wanting something we haven't got, or feeling we have got something and overinflating ourselves. So there's a kind of unrealistic relationship to our own attributes. And the pride, one of the ways we can use pride to try to undercut another being, or use pride to kind of put ourselves in either underneath or above other people. And it's that kind of separating out, splitting off from each other, that of course limits our capacity for love. So what we have in this realm is the flaming sword. So the flaming sword is traditionally associated with wisdom, really clear knowing of how things are, clear knowing that we have this, we need to actually trust in conditions, work to patiently develop the capacity to express and embody love. You can't just grasp after it. So the flaming sword is really pointing towards this. Well, I think when I was thinking about a flaming sword, I was actually thinking about the process of cauterizing a wound. That actually you just need to start that cut that is being caused by trying to sort of force a kind of grasping after something. Actually, that cut needs to be cauterized so that the tree itself can then flow and mature in its own way, in its own time. So to really get hold of the flaming sword and use it appropriately, use it skillfully to manifest love is the aim, is the kind of gift of the flaming sword.
Are these symbols also in this picture?
In some, they kind of, this is a representation. You probably need to look at quite a number of the different, there's so many different images of the Wheel of Life that each one will draw out slightly different facets. And these are the traditional expressions of the Bodhisattva's response to suffering in each of these realms. This is each of these gifts, if you like, are sort of pictured in various ways for each of these realms. So the last one, come round, which is actually on this side, this is the Preta realm. So the Preta realm is dealing with addiction. So addiction, as we may know, is that we've experienced anything like it, is that we have this need for love, and that need or that addictive compulsions tends to be because we're trying to overlay or fill a hole that we feel in our being that is unbearable to stay in relationship to. That addictive nature that is wanting to suppress our discomfort is trying to find a temporary numbing or a soothing of that that space, the absence of love that we feel in ourselves, or the absence of our capacity to love. So the way this is pictured in the images of the Wheel of Life is that we have these beings in this realm are pictured as being to have very swollen bellies and minute pinhole mouths, and the environment is very bleak in which they live. And what they're doing is just picking up anything that they can find and trying to ram it into this pinhole mouth to find nourishment. And unfortunately, whatever they put into their mouth turns to either fire or excrement. So one can imagine this realm being extremely painful, but also that sense of how we're kind of reaching for things which actually don't give us lasting nourishment. We're kind of trying to compensate, and in doing that, that act of compensation is actually just, although we may get some temporary soothing or numbing, actually we just burn more deeply. We find the experience even more painful. And this seems to be the kind of the difficulty and the despair of addiction. So what does the Bodhisattva offer in this realm? Well, the symbol is food and drink. So what that means is that we try to find that which really appropriately nourishes us. We turn towards that vulnerable, unfed part of ourselves and try to tend to feed, to nourish that part so that it doesn't feel impelled to act out and reach out for that which doesn't actually now nourish. So that is the 6 realms. That is just 6 snapshots of an infinite number of realms which we pass in and out of, possibly moment to moment, certainly day by day. We will find ourselves in these different places. So one thing is to say that these realms aren't fixed. They're not kind of, they can be momentary, they can be fleeting, or they can be long-term kind of habits of being. And really what we're trying to do is to recognize that all of these realms that I've been describing to you, all of these realms have been created by the veils. It's the perceptions of the beings in that realm that is creating the image, the kind of the experience of that realm. How we relate to our experience creates our life, creates our world. How we know ourselves, know the world, is dependent on our perceptions, our views, our habits of being. And this is why they're so crucial to begin to know, really take ownership of, to actually allow us to begin to free ourselves from any particular realm that we get lost in. So we have on these images really the kind of importance of, we need these forces, beneficent forces to draw on, to really and know that wherever we find ourselves, there is a gift for us that will start to free us, that will start to open our heart, open our life. There is no realm without the presence of Bodhisattva. That's why I've shown that image as being, it kind of encloses, it holds, all these realms are held by the Bodhisattva. So I think that's as far as I can get tonight. So I haven't really got an ending. I'll just kind of just stop there. And